welcome to Okon Bros. This is Eric.
And I am Michael. And on today's show of Okon Bros, we have, I'm like fanboying right now, big time.
We're going to be doing that a lot today.
Yeah, we're going to be doing that a lot. We have a lot to talk about. We have on best-selling author of the Ryan Drake series, which is a total of 9 books, Will Jordan. His new book, Something to Die For, comes out on November 9th, 2020. He's a YouTuber with the moniker The Critical Drinker with over 500,000 followers. Will, thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to be here. So how are you guys doing today?
We're doing great. We're doing great. So how the hell did you come up with the name The Critical Drinker?
Well, I guess I've got a well-known fondness for alcohol, so that was a good start. And I guess I was basing it around this idea of critical thinking when it comes to reviewing movies. So rather than being the critical thinker, I was like, well, I'll be the critical drinker instead. And it just seemed to roll off the tongue. So I thought, okay, that'll work.
That's fantastic. And this was born out of your absolute hatred for Hollywood, I'm assuming?
Not, I guess what it's turned into, because really, as a kid, like we all did, I grew up watching Hollywood movies, and for me, growing up in a little town in Scotland, there wasn't an awful lot to do. So movies became like one of the things that kept you entertained, and it was like a passport to like new worlds, and the most fantastical things you could imagine could be made real on screen, and it was great. And it was only, the last 4, 5, 6 years that it started to change. And obviously there's trends in Hollywood and things go in and out of fashion, but really that's when I started to notice a change in what was being shown, and the way movies were written and the quality of them. It had really started to go downhill, and it started to get very preachy and really started to push a lot of things into it that nobody really wanted. And that, people watched movies to escape from all of that sort of thing. And suddenly they were being confronted with it again and again and being lectured to in films. And it just really started to get me down about movies. It started to, kind of affect my kind of enthusiasm for film. And it got to the point where I thought, I'd really like to talk about this, and I'd like to, address some of these problems and explain why they're problems, and try and make sense of it, and try and contrast that with older movies that did this sort of thing so much better. And that's where my channel was kind of born from.
I wanted to say, like, when I first heard your channel, I thought your pulse on American culture was so spot on, and you articulate it so much better than I ever could. I thought that your accent and your shtick, so to speak, was completely made up. Like, I thought that you were making like a pretend voice because it was so profound.
We thought you were an insider. We thought you were an insider to Hollywood because you got storytelling. Like, you totally understand it.
And it's just amazing to me that, you're from Scotland, correct?
Yes, I am.
How do you have such, because like I know nothing about Scotland. Like I'm the first person to say that. I don't know. I barely know what the culture is. How do you have such a microscopic pinpoint culture onto what is going on with American movies?
I mean, I think a lot of it is just, we all watched the same movies when we were kids, whether you're from Scotland, whether you're from America, whether you're from, Japan or whatever, any part of the world, you're going to get exposed to the same films, those same classic movies. And so you all have the same experience. And that, combined with being a writer and having kind of a grasp on how stories are put together, how characters are written, those are all kind of universal things that you can apply to anything. So when you start to see that go wrong, okay, I didn't grow up in America or anything like that, but I've seen those same movies that people in America have seen, and so I had the same experience, and then I can talk about it from that perspective. So yeah, I'm a complete outsider when it comes to the industry and all that sort of thing. But writing stories and creating interesting new worlds, that's something that can happen anywhere. That's universal.
When you write your Ryan Drake series, is there anything that you're basing it off of from your childhood? Like
I mean, I put
the beats of the stories, meaning like, when I write movies, when I write films, Goonies, Back to the Future, those were my inspiration. Was there anything that was inspirational from Hollywood back in the 80s?
I think what you do is, for me, I just always try to tell the kind of stories that I would want to read. And so
Right.
it could be, it could be action movies. It could be the kind of conspiracy thrillers. It could be other books that I've read that kind of inspired me. There's not really a specific film or anything that really triggered my interest in wanting to write or anything like that. But you can take little bits and pieces, or just that kind of feel or that kind of world that certain movies have created, and then apply that to what you do. I put little references throughout my books, just to films. Like some of the characters were named after characters from the movie Aliens, just because I was a big fan of that when I was younger. Just little things like that, but I try not to emulate films specifically, because I want to just try and do my own thing as much as possible.
Right, of course. When you're writing, is it hard to distinguish like the drinker to you writing? Like, is there separate, or are you writing with like a kind of like an angry tone to say, like, screw this is how I'm going to do it?
No, because I was doing this long before. I was writing books long before I became the drinker.
Right.
So those are two things that don't interfere with each other too much. The amount of people, though, that have said, I'd love to have an audiobook of one of your novels read as the voice of the drinker. I don't know. I don't know how I could manage that in like a 500-page novel. My vocal cords would be shredded, but it could be fun.
So how intense is it for you? Like, how much work is involved for you to make a 10-minute video on YouTube?
So it would usually take a full day, maybe 2 days, to write the script for it, because I guess it would start with rewatching whatever film it was, just so I'm really, I've got it all fresh in my mind. Then I'll sit down, I'll write the script, take a couple of days to get that into a good shape where it's nice, as concise as I can make it, because I don't want to drone on for ages with my scripts. So try and make it nice and concise, make my points clearly, and then go ahead and record the audio. That's going to take me 15-20 minutes. Then just edit it so I can take out any lines that I've flubbed, or any times where I've tripped over my words or anything like that. And then it's just a case of getting in the video footage that's going to support that, and putting any little funny edits or anything I want to put in it.
Your Tyrion,
so that usually takes.
Your Tyrion, when Tyrion pukes, I rewatched that. I rewatched that. I hit the 10-second rewind just to watch you go, oh right, so they saved the damsel in distress.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know why I used that. It was just
because
I think
it's amazing.
It was back during the when I was doing the Game of Thrones reviews of season 8. It just leapt out at me. I think it's just like a really funny random clip to throw in, and it just became like a little hallmark of mine.
Did you do all 8 years? Did you watch all 8 years of Game of Thrones? Like, were you invested that heavily? Because I binge watched it for about 3 months. I didn't watch Game of Thrones for 8 years, and then I binge watched it for 3 months. I honestly didn't have the time. I was writing. So, like, were you that invested for those eight seasons?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I started writing season 1 when it first kicked off here in the UK, and it really hooked me right away, because it'd been pretty heavily advertised and people seemed quite fired up about it. And I thought, great, I'll give this a watch, because I really like fantasy movies and books and shows, that sort of thing. So this seemed really interesting, and then I watched it, and it was great. It wasn't goofy, it wasn't too pretentious. It was very gritty and realistic, and there was a lot of intelligent maneuvering and political games and intrigue and all that, and it just seemed like a great combination. So it really got me right away, and I watched every season pretty much as it came out. So I think that's why it was such a disappointment, because of
you skewered season 8, but you were right about everything. This is what we love about your channel, Will. You're so right. You destroyed Avatar. and we freaking loved Avatar.
Yeah, like,
and it's like, oh my god, yes,
you changed my opinion on movies, and like, thank you, I guess. But like, like I kind of liked Avatar, like I kind of liked it, and
see,
like
now I feel bad because I'm going around like destroying people's love for films.
No, you're
but
not.
you're
Actually,
right,
you're
though.
reigniting. I mean, but right before we did this interview, I watched your intro to your YouTube channel, and it's so inspirational, and it's so it hits home, it hits in the heart, because like so much of our lives are tied to movies of Chris Farley, of watching
Star
his
Wars,
movies growing up.
Lord of the Rings.
When like we say things now, it's part of who we are, right? When we'll like do a quote from a movie, but you forget that it's actually from a quote from a movie, and these movies shape who you are. And like you were saying in your channel, these upcoming movies and the movies in the last 5 years since what's happening, it's shaping this generation into who they are. And gosh, what is that going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I really shudder to think of what they're going to look back on and reflect on. Because, like you say, movies shape the culture that you live in, and your culture helps to give you a framework to live your life and see the world. So, we're lucky, I guess. We're probably about the same age, so we grew up with those movies that gave us a really broad sense of the world, and kind of, it taught you a sense of balance, and it didn't it taught you to kind of focus on telling these great stories with really interesting characters. But now, yeah, you see a different kind of focus. The focus is on the message in movies, and it's not always it doesn't always result in an inspirational experience. It doesn't grab you, it doesn't get your emotions going, because that's not what it's about anymore. And yeah, like you say, that's not very engaging.
Movies that I'm 42 years old. I can't even ask you, how old are you, Will?
I'm 37, so yeah, a few
37.
years younger,
All right.
but yeah, we're in the same sort of age range.
I'm 37. Yeah.
Right. So the idea that, we could look back on the 80s and 90s and look at a Back to the Future, or look at a Goonies, and even look back into like the 2000s with a Social Network or a There Will Be Blood. There's definitely, like, those movies strike a chord. They're with me forever. They're with me till the day I die. I can't find movies in the last 4 years that can do that. That you can go back and go, maybe Avengers Infinity War. Like, my son and I were huge Marvel fans, but then you get the political things, and it's just like, you got to explain to the thing that this is a message that they're trying to convey. Do you feel that there's been any movies in the past 4 years that are kind of worthy to take with you for the next few decades?
I'm not sure about the next few decades. I mean, we did have a lovely little run at the end of last year where we had movies like Joker. We had Ford versus Ferrari, which it wasn't a huge movie, but it was just a nice kind of classic film. 1917, a great war movie. All of those things. Those are films that really gave me hope. And when I got to the end of last year, I thought, oh, wow, it kind of feels like the tide could be turning here. And they're starting to focus on bringing out, just really interesting character-based movies again. This is great. And then
Birds
it's
of
hard
Prey
to get a
came
sense
out.
of it. Yeah, just trash like that. But I mean, then it's hard to get a sense of this year because nothing's come out. Everything's been on hold for the past 6 months. And so this year is a complete bust as far as new movies go. So I don't quite know what it would have been, but yeah, they're still capable of making good films. It's just you've got to try and encourage that. You've got to really try and promote these films that are good and that are going in the right direction, and that's, I guess, what I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to shift gears here for a second. I had a question about your YouTube channel, because we're a YouTube channel. We're trying to grow. And we base it on doing interviews and and having like our live streams and stuff like that. My question to you is, we want to have 500,000 subscribers. Did you want that? Was that like your vision for The Critical Drinker?
I had no idea. I mean, genuinely, like, some channels are lucky enough that they just kind of explode overnight. You know, other channels have got kind of a longer road ahead of them, and you never quite know what you were going to get. Mine, for whatever reason, like I dabbled in making YouTube videos a little bit, and all of a sudden, probably March, April last year, mine just really blew up. And, you know, I had a video come out that just really took off, and people were writing in the comments. I still remember this one guy said, dude, you need to have like 300,000 subscribers. And I laughed because I was like, yeah, right. I've got like 400 subscribers right now. The idea that I could even get to 1,000 would be pretty awesome. And then, yeah, sure enough, like a week later, I had 10, 15,000 subscribers just out of nowhere. And so the whole thing was a little bit of a blur. I almost didn't have time to take it all in. But then I had to reevaluate, I guess, where my channel was going and think, okay, you know, it seems like I've got people's interest. You know, I need to try and think what makes it work, like what made it take off, and what can I use going forward to keep that interest going. And you never know where it's going to go. I didn't think I'd get to 100,000, never mind 500.
We're there now, Will. We're at, you know, 400 subscribers on YouTube, and we have about 25,000 followers on LinkedIn and Facebook. But you became the voice for our generation, for the people that don't appreciate what's being pushed in our faces. You know, I go to you, Eric and I go to you. Our mom goes to you when she wants to know what's missing, what's missing in a story, right? What's missing in a story. And you really, you say it so clearly, you say it so precise. You know, you have something really special going on here with this channel. You really do.
I just feel I've been very, very lucky. And so I try to go on that. Yeah. Well, I mean, I tried to go on that basis of, but no, like I try to look at it as, you know, every video that you're making, and every time you put something out there and people watch it, it's a privilege for you to have them watch your content. And so, you know, I don't ever try to be presumptuous about people watching it. And that's why I don't do that thing of like, you know, please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button and all that sort of thing, because I just think that if people like what you do, they'll subscribe. They'll do it. You need to ask them.
You tell them to go away.
Weirdly, it's almost like people just, yeah, and I think people then subscribe just to spite me on that one.
Yeah, that's so cool. You know, because like on our channel, like we're gonna be, you know, like, subscribe, share, comment.
We're stopping, you know? Eric. It's done. We're not saying that anymore.
Like,
we're gonna start telling people,
fucking subscribe to our channel.
Don't subscribe to our shit. You know, just stop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, honestly, it's reverse psychology. They'll do it just to annoy you then. But you know, it's
go ahead.
No, it's you know, it's great because the amount of people that have come to me and said, like, look, you know, I knew there was something up with this film, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and you've articulated it. But then and then I'll say to them, well, great, but now you'll recognize it and you'll know when it's missing in future. You know what to look for. So you don't, you know, you don't need to be told again and again. You've just been given this skill now, and you can take it forward, and you can kind of explain to other people as well. So that's kind of the way it goes, I suppose.
How did you learn about storytelling? Like, was there a book, or was there, you know, an author, or was like, did you go to school for it? Like, how did you learn how to write it? Because not everyone knows that, you know, the beats of a good story.
I've never been trained. Like, I've never done a creative writing course in my life. I've never done a degree in it or anything like that. And I haven't really read any books about it. But I kind of remember, even from a young age, I started to get a sense of how stories were put together. Like, as a kid, you know, when you watch films and you perhaps start to pick out a structure to it. And it was, you know, it was still basic back then, but I started to recognize, wow, I've kind of noticed with these films, there's always certain things that happen. Like, you know, you get to meet your main character. He gets pulled into this adventure of some sort. He suffers a loss that pushes him down, and there's like the lowest point of the story where everything seems really bad, and then he has to learn some lesson that pulls him back up again. I started to recognize that same structure getting used again and again. And once you recognize those beats, you start to see it, and you start to see the variations of it. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I kind of just taught myself, and the same with writing novels. You know, I just once I started to recognize how stories worked and the things I liked in them, I thought, okay, well, I'll try my hand at this and see if I can do this too. And it's trial and error. You got to find the way that works for you, but eventually you get it, and you move forward from there. So yeah, I didn't get trained in it or anything. I just kind of figured it out, I suppose, over years.
How did you come up with Ryan Drake? How did you come up with the story, the beats, the characters for the Ryan Drake series?
The Ryan Drake series actually began with Anya, who's the sort of female protagonist, or she's like the secondary character of it. But a lot of the backstory of the series is based around her, and Ryan Drake, the main character, gets introduced to her in the first book in the series. And a lot of it is gradually uncovering the things that she's done that now are affecting them in the present. So I just had this idea of this character who's older, more experienced, who's been there and done that, and who's now in a really bad place in life, and sort of connects with the main character. So it all grew out of that, really. And once you get that really bare skeleton of a story and a character, you just keep adding more and more, meat on the bones until you get a fully fleshed out story. And it grew and grew. When I started the series, I thought I was going to do 3 books, maybe 4 at the most, and now I've done 9. So it shows you how much it's grown.
So when you write, do you map it out, or does it just like kind of like vomit out? Does it like vomit out of you? Does like the story tell itself?
Are you a plotter or a panster? Is basically the question. Are you a plotter or panster?
Yeah, I'm a plotter. Very much a plotter. Because the books I write, especially now, they get quite complex, especially when you're dealing with 8 other books of overarching plot threads and stuff. You've got to keep it straight in your head. And so when I sit down to start my book, I will write a detailed synopsis of everything that's going to happen. It's going to be maybe 8, 9, 10 pages long, and it will just give you a nice blow-by-blow account of what's going to happen, what each character is going to do, how it ties together, and that way I can make sure I don't write myself into a corner at some point, because I've had that before where I haven't stuck to my plan. I've gone off in a different direction, and then I've realized, oh shit, I've screwed up here. I have to go back and change it. So honestly, like 10% more work early on usually means 50% less work later. So I definitely plot it.
Have you read the book Save the Cat by Blake Snyder? It's the last book on screenwriting you'll ever need.
No, I've heard about this. I've never read it, and I kind of wish I had, because it might give me some pointers.
I swear to God. So, Will, this is not the me show. Like, I'm a writer. I write screenplays. I write books. I credit all of my writing. Literally, the guy ruins every movie. He was kind of like you back in like the late, early 2010s. He breaks down how the beats are in every single film. It would be right up your alley. Blake Snyder, Save the Cat. I mean, it's like the Bible for me when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's something I need to make the time to read.
Definitely. So let me ask you a kind of like a funny question, because I'm really curious to know the answer. I've waited like over a year to ask you this. If Rian Johnson comes to you and says, I want to take, I hear some laughing in the background. I want to take the Ryan Drake series. I want to take the Ryan Drake series, and we're gonna Disneyfy it. We're gonna bring it to Disney, Lucasfilm, the whole 9 yards. We're gonna turn it to the next.
And here's $20 million.
And here's $20 million plus. You get all the book sales. You revert the right. What do you do? What do you do at this point? Right? Like,
do you sell yourself?
I would. Did you
hang up? Did you hang up?
No, I think in that situation, I would take the money and completely cut myself off from the project and just say, this is a thing that they did. I had no involvement in it. And, good luck to them. I'm sure you'll do a great job subverting my expectations, Ryan.
Is that your end goal with the books? Do you want the books made into a movie, into a series on Netflix, Amazon, whatever?
I mean, I think every writer does, really. It would be silly to say otherwise. You obviously hope that the right director or the right studio comes along to give you, a good script and perhaps a degree of control over it. But it's just, it's something that you don't have much control over. I mean, I've certainly sold the rights to the first novel to get made into a movie, but then so many writers do. You can sell the option rights. They sit there in a cupboard for 10 years doing nothing. You just never quite know.
Do you have a
So,
manager? Are you
yep.
are you represented by anyone on the West Coast, or you're strictly you just have the publicist and the agent?
I just got I got the publicist here in the UK. They handle film and TV rights as well. So I haven't really needed anything of that nature yet.
Okay. All right. I have, if you're ever looking for the attorney or the manager to, in addition to what else you have, I got the representation on the left coast, and if you need it, I'll give it to you after the show. But I digress. I want to know more about what you're doing. So yes to Ryan Johnson if he's gonna write the paycheck and he's gonna Ryan Johnson the Ryan Drake series.
Yeah.
Are you scared that you might have alienated Hollywood? Like if your stuff ever gets to the West Coast and they're going to pull you up your stuff and they're going to put Brie Larson in as the star. Like, are they going to be like, wait,
boggles, dude. It really does.
Right. They're going to be like turning the page and be like, wait, this is Will Jordan, the critical drinker? Like he's been skewering us the last 4 years. Like, are you scared that you're not kind of kicking the hornet's nest in Hollywood? That you're not kind of like throwing the grenade and saying, if you want me, come and get me?
Not really. I mean, honestly, I would rather be skewered for the opinions that I do have than, just kind of half-heartedly mollified for opinions that I don't have, and just trying to say what people want me to say. That's no way to live, really. And ultimately, the reason this channel has done well is I've spoken my mind and I guess said what other people are thinking. And it's not done from a position of hatred. I don't hate Hollywood. I don't hate movies. It's done from a position of, you used to be awesome. I used to love what you did. Now I don't. And I'm trying to explain why. And, if perhaps you would listen, maybe me and you and all the people who have been sort of alienated by present day movies can reach some kind of compromise where we can all get back to enjoying films. That's why we're all involved in this, because we love it as an art form. And yeah, it's definitely not done as a thing where I hate stuff. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have that negative mindset. And that's why, I'll do live streams where we talk about movies that we really enjoy, or I'll do a drinker recommends video where it's like, oh, I'm going to pick out a film that's really great, and I can just be really enthusiastic and explain why it works so well. That's what I enjoy doing.
I love those videos because it's not current, and you're picking a great movie from a time and place. And, because everything on YouTube and podcasting has to be always so relevant. And I guess by picking those movies that are just good, it is relevant because good storytelling is timeless.
Yeah. And it nothing makes me happier than people who are come to me and say, look, I'd never really heard of this movie, or I never thought to watch it, to be honest, because it didn't really interest me, but I did give it a go because you recommended it and I absolutely loved it. And it's like, great, I've done my job. You've got an entertainment out of that film because of the video I made. Great. That's what I enjoy.
You can come off as divisive to certain factions. How do you deal with people? I'm sure you have haters that say you're wrong. Birds of Prey was the greatest movie ever made. How do you deal with detractors?
I mean, I don't care. Ultimately,
Okay.
I think if you get any degree of notoriety on YouTube, you're going to get people that hate you. It's just inevitable. And if they come at me on Twitter or something like that, even this is pretty rare, but like most of the time I'm not even aware of it, because I'll go on social media like once a day, maybe, and I'll probably miss 90% of my notifications. So there's probably people giving me death threats that I don't even know about. And I'm just blissfully unaware. But yeah, like I'm not gonna get into like petty arguments with people on social media or anything like that about the finer points of a movie, because what's the point? You're not going to change their minds in that case. Ultimately, you're just going to waste your own time and get yourself pissed off and give them the one thing that they want, which is your attention. I'm happy to get into like a civilized discussion with people who I disagree with on a film. That's great. I've done that on live streams before where we've talked about, different perspective on movies. And that's great. But like, if it's someone who's just like, nah, you're full of shit, man, I hate you. Like, I'm just not going to give them any of my time. It's not worth my time.
Yeah.
You're in this clique. I don't even know how to even like bring up even a question at this point, but you have this like this clique that Eric and I are absolutely obsessed with. Like it's you, Doomcock, Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotics, Mauler. You know, do you guys like hang out with each other? Are you guys like, do you guys have like a mass text messaging thread to say, all right, we're gonna skewer The Last Jedi today?
No, nothing like that. No.
Okay.
I mean, we like I don't think there's any kind of forum where we're all together talking at the same time. We certainly don't plan any of our videos. It will just be a case of, hey, do you want to come on my live stream? We're going to talk about this on such and such a date, and you're either available or you're not. Just things like that. Yeah, and you kind of come to know these people just because you're all in the same sphere, and like maybe if you're interested in talking to the person, you just hit them up on Twitter or whatever other method you might have to contact them and say, look, you know, I like your stuff. Want to do a stream sometime? Want to talk about various movies? And usually they'll say yes. And honestly, like all the other content creators that I've dealt with have been like the nicest, most supportive, you know,
Really?
professional people. Yeah, genuinely.
Yeah.
There's never been any like backstabbing or criticism of each other behind the scenes or anything like that. They've always been like really like if we're doing a stream, they'll be really professional and polite, and yeah, it's been
Yeah.
really good
That's
environment.
incredible. That's incredible.
I have a question. So if Critical Drinker never took off, if your writing career never took off, what would you be doing?
I'd be pretty sad. I mean, honestly, like I was writing, like I say, I was writing books long before you know, I took off as the critical drinker. So that was my passion. And it was just
Right.
storytelling. I suppose even if I wasn't doing that, I would have found some avenue for this kind of thing. Like, I guess I
Right.
just love the idea of storytelling. And however I got into it, I would find some way of getting that out. And I'd like to think I would have found another way of making a go of it.
It's great. You know, very few people in the world get to follow their passion. So, you know, that's where you're lucky, I guess. That's very cool.
Yeah, I've been very lucky.
What are your top 5 favorite movies, Will, of all time that you could watch on repeat and never have? And you're going to make a critical drinker that the drinker recommends these top 5 movies.
Oh, damn. I'm glad you didn't just ask for one, because it's impossible to nail one movie as like your favorite.
I would do a 10. I would do top 10. I'm famous on Facebook and LinkedIn for my top 10 lists. But if you want to give a top 10 of your favorite movies of all time, we could talk about this for the next 2 hours if we can. Very curious.
I mean, I'll go with 5 because honestly, like if I was to pick them out, they wouldn't even be like classic, you know, artistically significant movies. They're just movies that I would find really fun to watch. One of my all-time favorites, which I've still never got around to reviewing, it's Big Trouble in Little China with Kurt Russell. I absolutely love that film. It's just so damn fun.
Yes.
Back to the Future.
Yeah. Of course.
That would definitely be one of them.
I heard they were remaking Big Trouble with The Rock. I don't know if that's I read that a few years ago actually, but you know, they were remaking it, but whatever. Please continue.
Yeah. I mean, just don't remake it. It's got that perfect combination of goofiness and like 80s machismo, and just it's perfect. Yeah. So I was saying there, Back to the Future would be another one. I love the whole trilogy, but the first one in particular, it's just got a real sense of wonder to it. So great movie. Film. Yeah, it's just that, and I think it's the same for a lot of people. Also, Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. That would I love the Indiana Jones movies. I love the adventure of it. I love the traveling all across the world, the tombs, the traps, the bad guys. It's brilliant fun to watch. Just like a classic adventure, you know, story. So that would probably be my third one. Fourth one, it's one of the Star Trek movies, I would say. I did a live stream about it. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I love it. I think that a brilliant villain, a Captain Kirk who's going through a midlife crisis. You know, his best friend sacrificing himself. Brilliant.
Our mother is a massive Trekkie. She's watched every episode. She has them all on DVD. And when she watched the new J.J. Abrams ones, I hated the new ones. I didn't like the new, with Chris Pine.
See, that was one of the movies where I was like, I kind of like it.
No,
and then all of a sudden, and then the drinker gets on. I'm like, I changed my mind.
But you literally changed my mom's mind where you pointed out the flaws in all three of the newer movies. And she's like, I never saw it like that. He's right. The drinker is right. I'm like, yes,
I think you don't notice that. You don't really notice it unless you're still fairly well versed in the original movies, and things like Star Trek: The Next Generation, where you got that kind of classic Star Trek feel, and the kind of moral dilemmas that they wrestle with, all that sort of thing. And then when you get to the JJ movies, and suddenly it's all high energy and everyone's running about and stuff's exploding and the Enterprise is getting blown up every single episodes, and it's all just like frantic madcap nonsense just getting fired into your face like every 5 minutes, and it's just overwhelming. It's like Star Trek trying to be Star Wars, and it's easy to be fooled by it because you don't really get a chance to stop and think about anything that's happening, and you think it's good, but then you stop for a while. You consider how it's actually put together and how it compares to the originals, and you're like, no, this is terrible. This is trash. And that's the realization I guess I came to.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And what's the fifth one, Will?
The last one? Oh, man. I'm trying to pick one more. It would probably be a horror movie that was made in the UK. You guys have probably never heard of it. It's a werewolf horror movie called Dog Soldiers. And it's about a sort of team of British soldiers that gets trapped in a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, under siege by werewolves. And it's honestly the most fun movie. Like it's got so many like great gags. It's got loads of like in jokes and references to to older classic movies, and it's got really good action, and the characters are just brilliant. Like the dialogue is so funny. It's got comedic elements, but fundamentally it's still kind of a serious horror movie. So it just again, not an artistically significant film, but just one that I really enjoy watching.
Question for you: what do you think of There Will Be Blood?
Oh, Eric, you took the freaking question right out of my mouth, dude. That's our favorite.
Yeah,
that's our favorite movie of all time. My personal favorite.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis is just terrifying in it. I love that every scene he's in, he just looks like he wants to skewer the guy next to him. He just seems to hate everyone. He's got that simmering rage in him about everything. It's got kind of a mesmerizing quality to the movie because there's a lot of like drawn out scenes where there's no dialogue. There's just the soundtrack. You'll get a guy staring at someone else like across the room, and you can see the camera's just focused on him, and again you can see the simmering kind of emotions building up. It's a compelling movie, and it's the kind of performance that you don't get out of someone very often. So
I implore you to do a Drinker Recommends. That's and if you could dedicate it to the Okon Bros, I'd really appreciate it. That There Will Be Blood is my number one. Number two would probably be Back to the Future, and then three would probably be Goonies. I don't know if you're a Goonies. Kid. Yeah, you're a Goonies guy?
I like the Goonies. I don't know if it was you guys as well, but I watched it when I was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. Like I was just a little kid when I saw it for the first time. And holy crap, like Sloth scared the shit out of me when you first meet him. He's like this basement, like a chunk gets put in there with him, and he's like chained to the wall and stuff. I'm like, oh my god, this is awful. But it's a great venture, and it's because it's all based around the kids, like they've got so much energy to them, like they're always full of excitement and stuff, and like they're totally ill-equipped for this adventure that they're on, but they somehow like have to puzzle it out together. And it's a good film. It just feels like a really wholesome movie.
What movie did you watch when you were younger, and then all of a sudden you watched when you were an adult, and you're like, oh, that's the message? Like for me, Tommy Boy. with Chris Farley. I watched that when I was a kid, and you watch that for Fat Guy in a Little Coat, right? When you were younger, but then all of a sudden you see the coming of age where he lost his father. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he has to save the company. And then you see the epiphanies happen where he becomes a man. That movie for me, where like it was so it hit different the older I got. What movies existed like that for you?
There was two, I think, for me. One of them would be probably "It's a Wonderful Life," which sounds weird, but it's kind of seen as this just like sugary sweet Christmas movie that's got like a happy ending. But if you actually watch it, it deals with some really dark stuff. Like, a guy contemplating suicide, the kind of frustrations and the setbacks that people, like everyone, kind of experiences in their lives. And I like how, as the movie progresses, you see this guy who kind of bit by bit has to give up on every dream that he's had, and he can never quite. He's desperate to break away from this little, small town America kind of thing and get out into the world. And he's obviously capable of doing incredible things, but it's never quite able to happen for him. And he's just stuck in this really unsatisfying life where things keep going wrong for him. And you see him get more and more frustrated and more angry until eventually it boils over. And he's reduced down to his lowest point where he's contemplating throwing himself off a bridge. And it's only then, like, when you actually get to see this, the sum total of his life, that he hasn't achieved the dreams that he started out with, but he's done incredible things in his own way. I think it didn't really hit home until I saw it much later in life, because it's probably not the sort of film that you think too much about. But yeah, when I look at it now, I'm like, God, it actually isn't afraid to deal with some pretty dark stuff, like the frustrations that people have in life. I think that was an interesting one.
And there was another one you said there was another movie that you found.
The other one,
on.
it's a really weird one. It was Starship Troopers. I watched that when I was like a teenager. Yeah. And I did not get it at all because I was only 15 or something when I saw it. And I was just like, This is a dumb action movie about people shooting bugs. And it was only later when I came back to it and I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. These bits with the propaganda videos and, the way the characters are just completely empty shells. Like they're just chosen because they look beautiful and all that sort of thing. It really clicked at some point, and I was like, "Oh, right, that's what this is about. This is about like the power of propaganda and like."
Eric and I, real quick brief story.
Fact.
Eric and I, our real quick brief background on us. Eric and our family, our parents own a limousine service. They started limousine service 50 years ago, a global car service in their kitchen on Long Island, and we deal with the entertainment industry. We drive the entire entertainment industry. So any movie that's being filmed, any production that's being filmed, we're driving that production. And one summer, Eric and I used to go to Los Angeles when our parents were building this company. And, the studios were our background. They were our playground. So we went to Sony Pictures one day during the summer. We were there. We were, being kind of babysat by like one production assistant or whatever, while our parents were were in the travel office. And they just started taking us around to all the sets. And we walked onto this massive set with all these big caverns, and it was made of styrofoam. And this guy came over to us. He started talking to us, and we were like, "Oh, this place is cool." He's like, I couldn't do his accent, but it was Paul Verhoeven, and he's like, "I'm doing this movie called Starship. I'm doing this movie called Starship Troopers." And Eric was like, this is incredible. And he's like, all the bugs are going to come out of here, and all the bugs are going to come out of here. And we're like, "What bugs? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, it's going to be all computer generated." I'm like, but yes, Eric and I were on the set of Starship.
And then when there was a section where you walk through it, and then you would walk through the cockpit of where Jessica, was it Jessica Biel?
No, who was it?
No, it was Denise Richards.
Yes, Denise Richards.
I was thinking a Real Housewife.
You would walk through that set, and like we didn't walk on it, but you saw it from a distance, like where they were piloting that. But yeah, that's where all the movie magic was made. It was very cool.
Well, let me ask you a question. So the Rian Johnson thing doesn't pan out. It gets stuck in production hell, and you have an opportunity to cast and have the director of your dreams direct the Ryan Drake series. Who would the director be? Who would the film be cast
or
by?
The screenwriter? Would you want to write the screenplay?
Right.
Right. I would probably want to have a hand in the screenplay, I think. It would be great to have that kind of creative input, I suppose. In terms of the director, man,
Good question, huh?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think who does these kind of like action thriller type stories at this point. Um, the point of comparison I usually get is like the Bourne movies,
Yeah.
because you're in a similar sort of realm where you've got the CIA and conspiracies, all that sort of thing. So it would probably be that. I think I can't remember who actually
Greengrass?
directed.
Like Paul Greengrass.
Yes,
I
yeah,
think they're- yeah.
yeah.
And
So I would probably go with someone like Greengrass.
who's Ryan Drake in your story?
Ooh. When I originally wrote it, because I started about 10 years ago, I kind of imagined him looking like Colin Farrell.
Okay. Yes.
Because back then, I think, Farrell's too old now, but, he had that rough and ready kind of look to him. He's kind of the bad boy. He's got like the dark hair and everything. So, yeah, he probably could have played Ryan Drake.
So
that was how I imagined him looking.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I had Channing Tatum in one of my things, but you're right. All this stuff takes forever, so you never know. Like all these actors get older. Going to Star Wars, I'm a big Star Wars guy. Huge Star Wars guy. Star Wars. I grew up.
For the record, I'm not. I never really. I didn't care much about the trilogy, the original movies. Mainly, I'll say my piece and I'll let you go. But mainly because it was kind of just after my time, and then I just never really got into it. I'm more like a Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't done Lord of the. I'm surprised you haven't done Lord of the Rings yet, Will. But I'll get back.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
Oh, I can't wait.
All right. Yes. The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings?
Well, I'd like to do both, honestly, because I would praise Lord of the Rings and absolutely skewer the Hobbit movies.
Yes. My son and I, Eric and I saw all the Lord of the Rings in the theaters. We were the first ones online at midnight. I mean, that's how obsessed we were with Lord of the Rings. And then I had children by the time the Hobbit came around, and my son and I were watching the Hobbit, and we watched Lord of the Rings, and we were looking at each other like, what the hell do we get? What were they thinking? Right? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
The singing. It was like a musical.
It really was, and it's the ludicrous, over the top action that really did it for me. When the dwarves and Bilbo are like trapped inside a cage thing, and it falls down a cliff, like inside a cave, and it bounces off 50 different walls, and it's like, okay, they would have been killed a dozen times over, but everyone's fine. It's like a madcap cartoon or something, whereas the action in Lord of the Rings was somewhat grounded for the most part. Like, yeah, okay, you're dealing with magic at times, or armies of orcs or whatever, but they generally did things that were physically believable. People couldn't leap 100 feet across a chasm or anything like that. But now it's just over the top nonsense.
It's cartoony.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't believe it came from the same guy.
Yeah, to me it felt like a cash grab, but whatever the case, I digress. Star Wars. Rumor is, and I heard this on Doomcock's show, that they're going to redo the trilogy. Do you feel that you had your hand in this? Do you feel that you kind of like you like kick the hornet's nest, like that your videos may have come across Kathy Kennedy's desk, and she's like, man, maybe I did fuck up, right? Like.
I have no idea, because I genuinely would be curious to know if any of these people are even aware of us or on YouTube and things that we've seen.
Yes, they are.
I think you'd be pleasantly surprised.
Yes, they are. You don't. I mean, the power of YouTube, right? Like, you're from Scotland, we're from Long Island, and we're connecting now because I watch your videos on my phone at night before I go to sleep. Right. Like,
yeah.
And I was like, I got it. This guy is just pure brilliance. I want to contact him. I would love to talk to him about his show on the Okon Bros show. So you don't think that you had any influence, that if they are going to redo it, you don't think Jon Favreau has heard what you said?
I guarantee you one of his assistants said, take a look at this. And they texted to him. Guaranteed.
I think it's difficult because, it would be, it's kind of narcissistic for me to sit there and think, oh yes, I can dictate what I want to Hollywood, and they'll bend to my wishes because I'm that important. I think I've always operated on this assumption that there's almost like this dividing line between what we do on YouTube and the world that Hollywood producers and stuff live in. And it's like we're two completely separate worlds, and there's very little crossover between them. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just being naive and assuming that, but who knows? I mean, I don't think they're going to redo this trilogy. Put it that way. I've heard rumors that they might try and make it non-canon or something in a quiet way, and they'll just gradually shuffle it off into oblivion. I don't think they'll ever go to the point of retconning it and saying, "Hey, guess what? We really screwed up with this, and we're so sorry. Let's just pretend it didn't happen." I think the best we can hope for is that they'll move beyond it and just kind of quietly try to forget that this was made. But yeah, if me and other people who have sincerely tried to point out the problems of these movies have had any tiny hand in influencing that, great. You know, maybe we've done something to help.
They should really. I made a post on this on my Facebook page, and I think I don't know if I tweeted or not. They should take the writers of Cobra Kai, and they should lock them in a room, and they should reboot the stories that needed to be rebooted the correct way. I think what they did with Cobra Kai was brilliant. That there were flaws. Yes. And I know you did a video on this, and I didn't watch Cobra Kai when it was on YouTube. I just started watching it when it was on Netflix about 2-3 weeks ago, and I went through all 2 seasons. It was brilliant. They should reboot Goonies like this. They should reboot Ghostbusters. I think they are actually rebooting Ghostbusters. That's your most liked video, by the way. The Ghostbusters, the 2016 Ghostbusters. Which, I mean,
it was a disaster.
I can't imagine people looking at this in the screen room going, "This is great. This is what's going to sell. This is what's going to change the culture. We did it, people." Of Chris Hemsworth dancing in a street, acting like a moron. I don't know, man. I don't know. Everything you say is just, it's the truth.
The Ghostbusters one was an interesting one because I rewatched the extended edition with Mahler and a few of the other guys. Like, they invited me on to do it. I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And wow, that's like 2 hours of my life I'm never getting back. That was like the theatrical cut was bad enough, but the extended version, it's an interesting one because it's like a masterclass in how not to make a movie. It's like, just turn the cameras on, get your actresses in front of you, and just shout, "Be funny," and just record whatever they do. You know, it's a really strange way of making a film.
When are you going to do Tarantino? Because he's my ultimate, right? Like Tarantino, Inglourious Bastards might have been my number 3 favorite movie of all time, but Tarantino, he doesn't follow the general, kind of beat sheet of what Hollywood is expecting. When are you going to start doing videos on Tarantino? And what do you feel about Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I've got a backlog of about 1,000 movies that I have to review. Right. So I do have a lot to crack on with. Tarantino movies are a really interesting one to review because he obviously has that very unique style. He does long takes. He does really intense dialogue. He can just a scene that could just be 2 characters sat at a table talking to each other can have you gripped in a way that no amount of special effects or fighting or action ever could. And that's the power of what he can do. And he's got a real knack for casting like really unexpected and quirky and interesting actors in his movies that just somehow work perfectly. I think maybe some of his later films haven't been quite up to his normal standards. I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it got a bit of stick for being a bit self-indulgent and a bit long, and I think this can happen after a while. If you've been in it as long as he has, maybe you start to almost emphasize too much the things that you're good at, and you lose sight of some of the other things that you kind of need to have in place for a good movie. But he certainly doesn't pump out movie after movie. He takes the projects on that he's really passionate about, and that you got to respect that. So I think I would want to do his movies justice because there's an awful lot to say about them. So I would really need to take the time to, like, if I was going to do Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction or something like that, the classic Tarantino films, I'd really want to watch them carefully and really make notes and, and try and make some good points.
So what's the future for the Critical Drinker?
More booze, hopefully, and more movies. I mean,
So you're just going to stick
like
to
I
what
say,
you.
this.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, this has been kind of a weird year because, obviously there's not been a lot of new films coming out. And so it's forced me and probably a lot of other people to go back to older films and work through a bit of a back catalogue. But, hopefully we'll get back to something approaching normal next year. But really, I want to keep plowing on with, breaking down what works in movies. I want to get more into the technical aspects of storytelling and character work, and even the process of reviewing things. Like people talk about objectivity and film criticism and stuff. I've got my own thoughts on that. I want to do more comparison videos where I take an older and a newer film, see what works between them, or even comparing two scenes from different movies. Just there's like practically infinite possibilities of things you can talk about with cinema. That's the fascinating thing about it. You could cover an entire trilogy or an entire franchise, or you can get right down to the detail of a single scene, whatever you want to talk about, and that's
Right. That's
the
beauty of
great
YouTube.
part of it.
Do you see? Are you on any other platforms? Like I know you have a Twitter, and you mentioned that you only check it like once a day. But are you publishing anywhere else? Like, do you transcribe your videos into blogs, or do you make them as podcasts or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. Just put them on YouTube. Occasionally, I'll go on Patreon and I'll share a script before I publish the video, just so people can, kind of see what you start with and how it then ends up as the finished product. But it's more just to give people a little behind the scenes look at how these things are made.
Will, why don't you have a podcast, man? I mean, yes, your videos are absolutely amazing and they're flawless and they're perfect for what they are. But why don't you like pull back the curtain on who the drinker really is? I mean, you're so we named you 5 movies and you gave us critiques that Eric and I could watch them 100 times and not come up with the verbiage that you did. So how do you have unlimited opportunity here, man?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I'll do live streams on YouTube, and so I can bring a guest in or 2 guests or whatever, and we'll talk about certain movies that we really like. And I guess that and creating content for my actual videos, my scripted videos, and managing like Patreon and Subscribestar and writing books and kind of going on social media, all of those things put together, like it's kind of enough to keep me busy at the moment. So
Right.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Will, I don't even want to say where can people find you, because you're going to be like, just go away now. So, I mean, do you want to even say where you want to, if you want to give your handles and whatnot, and we'll sign off, and we'll, if you want to just hold on before we sign off, but go ahead. Where can people find you, Will?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess you can find me on Twitter. I'm just the Critical Drinker, so I'm pretty easy to find. You obviously know my channel on YouTube. My books are available through Amazon, and the latest one is going to be called Something to Die For. So that comes out in November, and that's the Ryan Drake series. That's what it's part of. So those are the best ways to get in touch with me or to follow my work.
Everybody, please subscribe to The Critical Drinker and listen to Will, buy his books, and whatever you do, do not subscribe to Okon Bros. Leave us the hell alone. We got to come up with our own, like, go away now, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, share,
like a New Yorker, like, get the fuck out of here, something like that.
Yeah, there you go.
Will, hang on one second. We're going to sign off. Everyone, that was great. Please subscribe to The Critical Drinker, and if you can,
to the Okon Bros.
To the Okon Bros. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.